Before we begin, tell me where you're watching this from. Your city, your country? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that'll keep your heart racing and your mind spinning. Now sit back, because what you're about to hear is a story that proves money can buy everything except loyalty, respect, and true love. The morning sun poured its golden light over a mansion so big it looked like it could swallow the city whole. Polished marble floors, tall glass walls, and a fountain shaped like angel wings. It was the home of Adrian Cole, a self-made millionaire who had built his empire from nothing but ambition and ruthless deals. But success had done something strange to him. It had hollowed him out, turned the warmth in his heart into stone. Years ago, he was a man of passion, chasing dreams with a woman who believed in him. Emma, the woman who would later become his wife. But as the money came in, so did temptation. Whispers of admiration, women drawn to power, friends who turned into parasites. And somewhere in that chaos, Adrian forgot who had stood beside him when he had nothing. On this particular morning, Emma stood near the window of their mansion, one hand resting gently on her swollen belly. She was 7 months pregnant, glowing with the kind of softness only motherhood brings, but her eyes were clouded with worry. She had barely seen her husband in days. The house staff avoided her gaze, as if they already knew something she didn't. When she finally walked outside to the driveway, the truth hit her like a punch. There, in front of the mansion, Adrian leaned casually against his luxury car, his shirt slightly unbuttoned, sunglasses reflecting the morning light. Beside him stood Vanessa Reed, tall, slim, and dressed in a silk outfit that cost more than most people's yearly income. Her lips curved into a smirk the moment she saw Emma. "Oh, the wife finally decided to show up," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. Adrian didn't stop her. In fact, he chuckled as if entertained. Emma's heart twisted. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You didn't come home last night." "I was worried." Vanessa let out a laugh, sharp and cruel. "He was with me, sweetheart." "Didn't he tell you? Maybe you should focus on your condition," she said, pointing to Emma's belly, "instead of trying to control a man way out of your league." The insult burned through Emma's chest. She looked at Adrian, silently begging him to defend her, but he only exhaled and said coldly, "Emma, don't make a scene." "You know how I hate drama." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm your wife," she said softly. "The mother of your child." Vanessa stepped closer, her heels clicking on the marble. "Wife?" she repeated, almost laughing. "Please. You were a stepping stone, no pun intended." Then she did something no one expected. When Emma tried to move back, Vanessa shoved her shoulder lightly, making her stumble and drop to her knees. The pregnant woman gasped, holding herself for balance. Adrian took a step forward, not to help, but to warn. "Careful, Emma, don't overreact." And that's when Vanessa placed her stiletto heel on Emma's hand, pressing down just enough to make her whimper in pain. "Oops," Vanessa said, feigning innocence. "Did I step on something delicate?" The moment froze. The birds stopped singing, the wind stopped moving. Adrian said nothing. The man who once promised to protect her in sickness and in health stood there, silent, watching the woman carrying his child being humiliated. Emma pulled her hand away, clutching it to her chest. Her tears finally fell, not from the pain but from the betrayal. "Adrian, why?" she whispered. But before he could answer, the distant sound of engines echoed across the long driveway. Deep, heavy roars that cut through the air like thunder. 3 sleek black luxury cars appeared at the gates, their tinted windows gleaming in the sunlight. The guards looked confused. No one had been scheduled to arrive. The cars didn't slow down until they reached the front of the mansion, stopping side by side in perfect synchronization. The doors opened almost simultaneously, and 3 men stepped out, each one dressed in tailored suits that screamed authority. The first, tall and calm with piercing gray eyes, removed his sunglasses and looked around with quiet calculation. That was Ethan Reeves, Emma's eldest brother, the CEO of a tech conglomerate that built half the country's smart systems. The second, Lucas Reeves, leaned casually against his car door, his sharp jawline and perfectly styled hair hiding the fact that he controlled billions in international finance. And the third, the youngest, Noah Reeves, was the wild one, a real estate prodigy whose reputation for being both charming and dangerous followed him everywhere. The moment Emma saw them, her breath caught. "Ethan, Lucas, Noah," she whispered in disbelief. Adrian froze. He had heard the names before, in business magazines, on news reports. The Reeves brothers, known across industries for their brilliance and the mystery that surrounded them. He had married Emma years ago without realizing who her family truly was. She had kept it private, never using her brother's fame or money. But now they were here and their timing was no accident. Ethan was the first to move. His steps were slow, deliberate, and each one echoed across the courtyard. His gaze fell on Emma's tear-streaked face, then dropped to her trembling hands. When his eyes lifted to Adrian, the air itself seemed to tighten. "Did you just let someone step on our sister?" he asked, his voice low but sharp enough to slice through steel. Vanessa flinched. Lucas stepped forward, slipping his hands into his pockets. "Funny," he said lightly, though his tone carried danger. "I thought Adrian Cole was supposed to be a gentleman. The media loves that angle." Noah, standing a little apart, looked at Vanessa with cold amusement. "You enjoy stepping on pregnant women?" he asked quietly. "Try that again while I'm here." Vanessa's confidence melted. I didn't mean," she started, but Noah raised his hand slightly, silencing her. Adrian tried to regain control. "Look, this is a misunderstanding," he said quickly, forcing a laugh. "Emma's emotional lately, and—" Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Don't you dare blame her," he said. "We heard enough." His tone was calm, but his words carried the weight of authority that made even CEOs listen. Emma's tears turned into quiet sobs. Ethan reached for her gently, helping her to her feet while Lucas draped his jacket over her shoulders. "You shouldn't be standing in the sun," Lucas said softly, his voice protective. Noah glanced at Adrian, his expression unreadable. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Adrian clenched his fists. "Stay out of my marriage," he snapped. "This is between me and my wife." Noah smirked, his eyes dark. "You stopped being a husband the moment you let someone else touch her." The guards at the mansion shifted nervously. They weren't sure whose orders to follow. Adrian's power suddenly felt small, fragile, like a paper crown. Ethan turned to Vanessa, his tone polite but icy. "Miss Reed, I suggest you leave," he said. "Before this conversation includes you." Vanessa hesitated, glancing at Adrian for help, but he didn't move. She huffed, grabbed her purse, and hurried toward her car, the echo of her heels fading fast. The brothers stood in silence for a moment. Then Ethan said quietly, "Emma, pack your things. You're coming home." Emma shook her head weakly. "I can't. I don't want trouble." Lucas smiled faintly. "Too late for that. He brought trouble to you." Noah stepped closer to Adrian. "You think being a millionaire makes you powerful?" he said softly. "You haven't seen real power until someone takes everything you thought you owned and leaves you watching." Adrian tried to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. The Reeves brothers didn't need to raise their voices. Their presence alone was enough to make his empire feel small. Ethan looked at his sister. "You're not staying here another night." Emma hesitated, torn between love and pain. But when she looked at Adrian's face, cold, unrepentant, something inside her finally broke. She nodded. Lucas placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll handle the rest," he said. As the brothers escorted her toward their cars, Adrian stood frozen, his mind spinning. He wanted to shout, to demand she stay, but the words refused to come. The roar of the engines started again, echoing through the marble courtyard as the 3 cars pulled away, carrying Emma toward safety and leaving Adrian in the ruins of his pride. For a moment, silence returned. The fountain still sparkled, the mansion still glimmered in the sunlight, but it all felt different. Emptier, colder. Adrian looked down at the faint footprint Vanessa's heel had left on the marble, where Emma had fallen. It was small, almost invisible, but it burned into his mind like a scar. Somewhere deep inside, a sliver of regret began to form. Not because he had been caught, but because he realized he had just lost the only person who ever truly loved him. He turned back toward the house, but the echo of Ethan's words followed him like a shadow. "Did you just let someone step on our sister?" He could still see their eyes, calm, deadly, certain, and for the first time in years, Adrian Cole felt powerless. What he didn't know was that this was only the beginning. The Reeves brothers weren't done. They didn't just protect their sister, they avenged her, and soon, Adrian's empire would start to crumble piece by piece under the quiet, calculated wrath of three men who had built empires far greater than his. But for now, all Adrian could do was stare at the empty driveway, the echo of engines fading into the distance, and realize that the world he had built on arrogance and betrayal was already starting to fall apart. The engines of the three black cars disappeared down the long, tree-lined road, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than stone. Adrian stood on the marble steps of his mansion, watching the faint dust rise from the driveway where his ex-wife, had just been taken away. For the first time, the house felt too quiet, too empty, too large for him alone. The staff avoided his gaze as they walked past, whispering under their breath. Power had always made him feel invincible, but that morning something had shifted. He could feel it in the air, in the way even the wind refused to touch him. Across the city, Emma sat quietly in the back seat of Ethan's car, her hands resting over her stomach. The passing streets blurred outside the window. Luxury stores, busy cafes, and city towers she hadn't seen in months. Lucas sat in the passenger seat, speaking softly into his phone, arranging doctors, lawyers, and a private security team. Noah drove the car in silence, his jaw tense. He glanced at Emma through the mirror, his voice low but calm. "You don't have to say anything," he told her. "We know enough." Emma shook her head slowly. "I should have left sooner," she whispered. "I thought I could fix it." Ethan turned slightly from the back seat. "You don't fix men like him. You just walk away, and make sure he never gets a chance to hurt you again." His words carried that quiet assurance that had always made her feel safe when they were children. The ride continued in silence for a while, broken only by the soft hum of the engine. Finally, the car turned through the gates of a private estate. Not flashy like Adrian's mansion, but elegant, peaceful, and surrounded by trees. Inside, Emma was helped upstairs to a spacious room overlooking a lake. Sunlight streamed through the curtains. She breathed deeply for the first time in weeks. Lucas handed her a warm drink. Noah adjusted the pillows, and Ethan made a quick call to the family doctor. "You'll stay here until you're ready," Ethan said. "No one will disturb you." Emma looked up at him, tears gathering again. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. "You're all so busy." Lucas cut her off with a half-smile. "You're our sister. You think we'd sit quietly while someone disrespected you?" Noah leaned against the window frame, his tone colder. "I just want to make sure he understands what he's done." Ethan shot him a look. "We'll do this the right way," he said. "No chaos, just precision." That was how the Reeves brothers worked, calm, controlled, methodical. And when they decided to move, the world listened. Back at the Cole estate, Adrian poured himself a glass of whiskey, trying to ignore the buzzing anxiety in his chest. He had faced competitors, lawsuits, even government investigations, but this felt different. His phone rang. It was his assistant, panicked. "Sir, we just received notice. The board meeting's been moved. And there's word that the Reeves Corporation might be acquiring your logistics division." Adrian frowned. "That's impossible," he snapped. "They're in tech, not shipping." "Sir, they've been buying up shares for the last week." Quietly, Adrian slammed his glass down. "Get me the lawyers," he growled. But somewhere deep down, he already knew this was more than business. This was personal. That evening, in a glass-walled office overlooking the skyline, Ethan met with Lucas and Noah. The city glittered beneath them like a living map of opportunity. "He's leveraged," Lucas said, flipping through a digital report. "Half his assets tied in volatile stock. We can freeze liquidity within 72 hours. Ethan nodded slowly. "Good, do it quietly. I don't want him to see it coming." Noah leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "And what about the mistress?" Ethan's tone stayed calm. "Leave her. She'll vanish the second his money does," Lucas chuckled. "She already tried. Her name's trending online, and not in a flattering way." Ethan didn't smile. "Focus." He glanced at his brothers. "We don't destroy people with noise. We do it with silence." The next day, Adrian woke up to a storm of messages. Contracts canceled. Partnerships under review. Accounts frozen pending compliance investigations. His empire was unraveling faster than he could call his lawyers. He slammed his fist on the desk. "Who's behind this?" he demanded. His CFO hesitated, then slid a folder across the table. "Sir, all the roads lead to Reeves Global Holdings." The color drained from Adrian's face. That afternoon, a black car pulled up outside his office building. Adrian recognized it instantly. The same model Ethan Reeves had stepped out of days ago. His heart pounded as the elevator doors opened and Ethan himself walked in, followed by Lucas and Noah. The entire floor fell silent. Ethan didn't ask for permission. He simply walked into Adrian's office. "You've been busy?" Ethan said quietly, his tone controlled but firm. Adrian forced a laugh. "You think you can threaten me by buying a few stocks? You can't touch me." Lucas leaned on the edge of the desk, smirking. "Funny, that's what your investors said this morning before pulling out." Noah crossed his arms. "We didn't come to talk business. We came to tell you something important." Adrian glared. "What?" Ethan's expression hardened. "Our sister's safe. And from now on, you don't go near her. You don't call. You don't even speak her name. If you do..." He paused, his eyes like steel. "You'll find out how fast everything you built can vanish." Adrian clenched his jaw. "You can't scare me with threats." Ethan stepped closer. "Then consider it a promise." For a long moment, no one spoke. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Finally, Ethan turned and walked toward the door. Lucas and Noah followed, but Noah paused at the threshold, glancing back. "You had something priceless, Adrian," he said quietly, "and you traded it for an illusion. Don't ever expect to get it back." When the brothers left, Adrian sank into his chair, his breath shaky. His phone vibrated again. Another email, another loss. His company's stock was plummeting, and the board had called an emergency meeting without him. It was only day 2. Meanwhile, at the Reeves estate, Emma spent the evening sitting by the lake. The breeze carried the scent of pine and water, and for the first time in months she felt calm. Lucas joined her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "You know," he said softly, "he's going to fall hard." Emma sighed. "I don't want revenge. I just want peace," Lucas nodded. "Then let us handle the rest. Peace requires justice." As the sun set, Emma rested a hand over her stomach. "Do you think he'll change?" she asked. Ethan's voice came from behind her. "People like him only change when there's nothing left to lose." Noah walked up beside them, his phone in hand. "And that moment," he said with a faint smirk, "is coming faster than he thinks." The next morning, the headlines exploded. Coal Industries faces sudden collapse. CEO Adrian Cole under investigation for fraudulent deals. Reeves Global steps in to acquire assets. Adrian's face was everywhere, the media tearing apart his once glamorous reputation. Vanessa, the mistress, was nowhere to be found. She'd disappeared overnight, her social media wiped clean. By noon, Adrian's phone stopped ringing. Investors stopped answering. The people who once chased him for partnerships now avoided even being seen with him. His empire was ashes, and all he could do was watch it burn. He drove aimlessly that evening, the city lights blurring outside his window. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about profit or power. He was thinking about Emma, the way she used to laugh when they were young, how she believed in him before anyone else did. He destroyed something pure, something real. And now, surrounded by glass and silence, he realized money couldn't buy a second chance. Across the city, in the quiet of her room, Emma wrote a letter she'd never send. She thanked him, not for love, but for teaching her what strength really was. She signed it simply, Emma Reeves, reclaiming her name, her dignity, and her peace. And far away, in a boardroom overlooking the skyline, Ethan closed another deal. Lucas watched another stock fall. And Noah smiled quietly to himself. "He's learned his lesson," Ethan said. "Now let him live with it." The story wasn't over, not yet. Adrian still had one last card to play. But for now, the balance had shifted. The brothers had done what they came to do: restore their sister's pride, remind the world that power without integrity is an illusion, and prove that no empire built on betrayal stands forever. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Now, let's finish what began with pride, betrayal, and justice. It had been 3 months since the fall of Adrian Cole. His mansion, once alive with parties and photographers, now stood empty. The fountains had stopped running, the gardens overgrown. He had lost everything, his company, his investors, his so-called friends. The tabloids had moved on to newer scandals, but his name remained stained, whispered only as a warning of arrogance and greed. Still, every morning he woke up before sunrise, made black coffee in silence, and sat on the same marble steps where he'd last seen Emma. He hadn't spoken to her since that day, but her face haunted every quiet moment, the look in her eyes, not of anger, but of disappointment. That was the look that broke him. He tried to rebuild, to start again. He reached out to contacts, called old allies, but doors that once opened instantly now stayed shut. His phone calls went unanswered, his emails unread. Adrian Cole, once the man everyone wanted to meet, had become invisible. One evening, sitting alone in the dark, he saw a news clip. Ethan Reeves being interviewed about a new foundation supporting single mothers and women entrepreneurs. The interviewer asked where the idea came from, and Ethan paused before answering softly, "Family." That one word hit Adrian like a blade. He turned off the TV and stared at the reflection of his own face, tired, unshaven, hollow. For the first time, he didn't see power or success. He saw the man he had become. Meanwhile, life had taken a different path for Emma. Her baby had been born, a healthy little girl with eyes as bright as her mother's and the same quiet strength. She named her Hope. The Reeves brothers surrounded her with love and protection, their mansion echoing with laughter again. Ethan made sure she never had to worry about money. Lucas set up a trust fund for the baby, and Noah, the one who never stayed in one place, found himself visiting every evening, bringing toys and stories. Emma didn't talk much about Adrian, but sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet, she'd look out at the lake and whisper, "I forgive you, but I won't forget." One afternoon, as autumn leaves began to fall, Adrian showed up outside the Reeves estate. He wasn't in a suit this time, just a plain shirt, worn jeans, and exhaustion written all over his face. The guard stopped him at the gate, but Ethan, seeing him on the security camera, decided to meet him. The two men faced each other by the gate, no words for a long moment, just silence heavy and cold. Finally, Adrian spoke. "I know I have no right to be here," he said quietly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, I need to see her. Once." Ethan studied him carefully, seeing not the arrogant man from before, but someone stripped of ego. "She doesn't need more pain," Ethan said. "I know," Adrian replied. "But please, I just want to make sure she's okay." Ethan didn't respond right away. He turned toward the house, then back to Adrian. "Wait here," he said. He walked back inside and found Emma in the nursery, cradling her daughter. When she heard who was outside, she froze. "He came here?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded. "He says he just wants to see you. I can send him away if you'd rather not." Emma looked down at her baby. Hope's tiny fingers curled around hers. For a long time, she said nothing. Then finally she sighed, let him in. Just for a moment. Outside, Adrian stood still, every second feeling heavier. When the gates opened and Emma stepped out carrying her child, he couldn't breathe. She looked radiant, calm, strong, nothing like the woman he'd once hurt. She stopped a few feet away. "Why are you here, Adrian?" she asked. He swallowed hard. "Because I had to tell you. I was wrong. About everything. The money, the power, it blinded me. You were the only person who ever believed in me before all of it. And I destroyed that." His voice broke slightly. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it before it's too late." Emma looked at him quietly. "Too late?" He nodded slowly. "The doctors say I've got something in my lungs. Too much stress, too many years of pretending I was untouchable. Maybe I deserve it." He gave a weak smile. "I just wanted to see you happy before I go." For the first time in months, Emma felt the wall around her heart tremble. She didn't hate him anymore. She pitied him. She stepped closer, holding Hope gently. "This is your daughter," she said softly. "Her name is Hope." Adrian's eyes filled instantly. He reached out but stopped halfway, afraid to touch. "She's beautiful," he whispered. Emma nodded. "She'll grow up knowing what love really means, what kindness looks like." She looked at him steadily. "And she'll also know what mistakes to never repeat." Adrian nodded, tears slipping down his face. That's all I could ask for. Ethan watched from a distance, arms crossed but eyes softened. He didn't interfere. This was Emma's moment. Adrian took a deep breath as if memorizing the scene. Emma, their child, the quiet peace he had thrown away. Then he stepped back. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting me see her." Emma didn't answer. She just watched as he turned and walked away, the wind rustling through the golden leaves around him. When the gate closed behind him, it felt final. Weeks passed. Winter came. Emma got a letter one morning, handwritten, simple. No return address. Inside was a single line. "Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." And beneath it, his signature, Adrian. No one ever heard from him again after that. Some said he left the country. Others said he donated what little he had left to charity and disappeared into the countryside. But Emma never tried to find out. She didn't need to. For her, that chapter was closed. Years later, Hope grew up surrounded by love. Her uncles guiding her mother teaching her grace and courage. And sometimes when she'd ask about her father, Emma would smile faintly and say, "He was a man who forgot what mattered most." But in the end, he remembered. The camera pans out, the lake glistening under the sunset. Emma standing with her daughter by her side. The world peaceful at last. Her voice narrates softly, "They say power can build empires, but only love builds legacies. And sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply living well." And as the screen fades to black, the narrator's voice closes the story. This was Millionaire lets mistress step on pregnant wife, until her 3 CEO brothers step out of luxury cars. If this story moved you, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because every story has 2 sides, but only one truth. Respect the ones who stand by you before the world does.